Miatta Fahnbulleh joins us, Chief Executive of the New Economics Foundation. Miatta, good evening.
Good evening.
Was this the kind of budget you were expecting, or were you pleasantly surprised or disappointed?
I was definitely pleasantly surprised. The good news is the government has finally seen the logic of spending more to invest in and boost our economy. That's a welcome move. That's a move in the right direction, and something that I'm happy about. But I think for me, the big question then becomes, how are they using this money? What are they spending it on? And the government has consistently said to us it wants to level up. And if it wants to level up, then it really needed to direct more of the increase in day-to-day spending into things like local services, into building the skills base, into building some of the kind of soft social infrastructure that are so critical to communities that have been left behind. And then the bigger mission for me is that actually the government needed a proper plan and investment program for the long term. And that means investing in green infrastructure and services that are particularly critical to communities that are very fossil fuel dependent in the North, in the Midlands, that must transition in a way that is just. And unfortunately, the budget fell short on the green side.
In terms of the infrastructure spending, some people are saying, well, obviously now's the right time to do it when you've got interest rates at an all-time low, obviously reduced again today. But it's £600 billion between now and 2024. That seems an awful lot of money. And of course, a lot of it had already been pre-announced, but there was £91 billion of extra infrastructure spending in this budget. Obviously, a lot of people think that we have a bit of a poor infrastructure in terms of transport in this country, and we do. But can that really be justified in these times?
Well, it's definitely right to borrow more when interest rates are so low. So I think the Chancellor's completely right on that. Now, whether they can get all that money out the door is to be seen. But for me, the big question is, if you're going to spend that amount of money, surely you should be investing in low carbon infrastructure. That's where we need to move. We know what the climate imperative is. So rather than 27 billion that's spent on roads, which is really important, actually I would have much rather have seen a much bigger proportion of that spent on public transport that we need to try and get people off roads and using low carbon solutions. We saw £1 billion only for what they call green transport solutions. And you compare that to 27 billion on roads. So yes, let's use low interest rates in order to borrow more, but let's borrow for the long term. And the biggest challenge outside Corona, which feels very immediate, but the bigger crisis, the bigger challenge is a green and environmental one. And unfortunately, we didn't use the opportunity of spending more in order to start getting us in the right path.
OK, thank you very much. That's Miatta Fahnbulleh.